Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny panel. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked to please ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode and that microphones are switched off while not in use. So agenda item 1 today is the appointment of the chair. So this is for the municipal year 2025-26. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Hay. Do I have a seconder, please?
Should we second?
Yes,
Oh, yes, there it is.
that's what I was thinking. I propose that we nominate Councillor Maureen Davies
Thank
as
you.
chair.
Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Hicks, thank you. So are there any alternative proposals? Okay, so it's therefore proposed that Councillor Maureen Davies is appointed as the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny panel for the current municipal year. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. So as Councillor Davies has given her apologies today, I will continue to conduct the meeting until the appointment of the vice chair is agreed. So the next item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Please can you report any apologies, Helen?
Yep, good morning. We've got apologies from Councillor Carney, Councillor Meekins and Councillor Davies.
Thank you. So item 3 on the agenda is the appointment of the vice chair for the municipal year 2025-2026. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Hay.
I propose Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other nominations? Okay, so thank you. The proposal is therefore to appoint Councillor Sinclair as the vice chair for the municipal year 2025-2026. Is that agreed? Yeah. Councillor Sinclair, you're duly appointed, and I will hand over the conduct of the meeting to you.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, we are being asked to approve the public minutes at pages 3 to 12 of the public agenda pack as a correct record of the meeting, which took place on the 20th of January 2025. Can I ask any member who does not agree with the minutes to indicate that now? I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now agreed. Agenda item 5, urgent items. There are no urgent items for consideration today. Agenda item 6. This is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please can you inform the meeting now? No hands are raised. Thank you. Just a housekeeping item. Before we move on to the substantive business of today's panel, there are 2 housekeeping matters, please. Firstly, I have been asked to seek approval of a change to the order of the agenda, specifically to move agenda item 7 so that it is instead heard after agenda items 8 and 9. This will enable Councillor Woolwork's attendance following another pre-booked commitment. Is that agreed? Thank you. The second matter is to confirm the withdrawal of item 10 from consideration at today's meeting. Item 10 relates to the draft annual report, which it is proposed will instead be presented to you by Councillor Davies at our meeting in July. Is that agreed? Thank you. So now we move on to agenda item 8. Agenda item 8 is an update on the response and ongoing management of ASB issues in Wisbech. I would like to welcome and invite those attending for the presentation of this item to please join us. Thank you for joining us today. Please can I request that you introduce yourselves and give a brief overview of your role in relation to this matter, and then please go ahead in providing your update. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Michael Basford. I am the Neighbourhood Policing Team Inspector responsible for the Fenland area. In relation to this particular matter, I believe you've received a brief update already. I'll just go over that again if that's okay. In relation to the incident which occurred earlier this year, quite a significant amount of police work was done around this incident, and we identified an individual that was responsible for quite a serious assault. He was in fact the main protagonist on this day. He was arrested, charged and remanded with assault. He received 2 months in prison at Cambridge Crown Court. He was also on probation and was recalled to prison, and he remains in prison at this time and will serve out the rest of his sentence in custody. There were 2 other individuals that were arrested at the time, juveniles. One received a conditional caution and the other was released with no further action. Our investigations revealed that he wasn't actually involved but was merely present. Several children were identified and interviewed at the police station with their parents. Referrals were submitted to the Youth Justice Service. We shared information and child protection reports with Children's Social Care. We also shared information with education and local housing authorities where relevant. We introduced what we have called the Youth Escalation Scheme, which is a scheme which seeks to identify and divert young people away from this type of behaviour. It works on a traffic light scheme. If you come to police attention, you will receive a letter to your parents, then it escalates through to amber. If your behaviour continues, then you will receive a visit from a police officer and, if relevant, a member of the local housing team. And then we move on to the red interventions, where we will bring that individual to the problem-solving group, and we will discuss them as a partnership regarding how we can identify ways to divert them away from this type of criminality. And there does become a point where police enforcement is necessary, unfortunately. However, we would like to attempt to try a diversionary route in the first instance, hence this scheme. Shortly after the incident, we visited each of the affected businesses. We provided reassurance and explained to the business owners what the plans were going forward. We looked at and worked with our partners in housing at closure orders or partial closure orders of home addresses, issued community protection notices and warnings for those that were over 16. We increased our visibility, especially around the Horse Fair shopping centre itself. As part of the wider changes that are coming to neighbourhood policing nationally under the Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee that the new government has launched, that will mean that there will be a significant increase in visible policing in and around town centres. And that's something that we'd started to do already. That work is well underway. My officers have each been allocated with individual areas of responsibility, geographical locations, and ensuring that they are identifiable and contactable. Much of the work that we do is proactive or preemptive, and a lot of that does go unseen, and it's not only around visible policing, although that clearly does provide a reassurance to the community, and that is a big part of what we do. We have had some good results, and Appendix F, which I'm sure you've all read, does go into some detail around the kind of work that we've been doing in partnership. Reports of antisocial behaviour year to date are actually down, and I think this is a vast improvement from where we were this time last year, certainly when I came into post. Wisbech is pretty much on a par with other similar sized areas within the county. I don't see that it's any different in respect of antisocial behaviour. I don't see that it's any worse. There is clearly some work that we can be doing, and we are doing, in terms of providing that reassurance and that feeling of safety within the community, and that's something that we're taking forward. And that's my update in relation to antisocial behaviour in Wisbech.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your time. Before I bring you in, Councillor Hicks, can I just remind members that we have to be mindful when we are discussing this issue of not identifying anyone, should that come up, or releasing any information that may jeopardise police operations. So if we could just be mindful in how we discuss this item. Councillor Hicks.
A few months ago now, I had a meeting with the residents of West End and two of your officers, and they told me something a little bit contradictory to yourself. They said they haven't got enough time to police on the beat, per se, because they were spread too thin. They was looking after mainly Wisbech, March, and then there was only two of them. So can you clarify how you're going to make the visible presence for the police when you've got only two officers on such a big area?
Thank you, Councillor Hicks.
Neighbourhood policing, yes, we do cover a large area, but we need to prioritise our work. With the Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee, we have redirected resources, so there will be there are dedicated officers responsible for dedicated areas, and they will be dedicated to being visible and available to members of the community in those specific communities. I disagree. I don't think that we are spread too thin at all.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Just following up on that, will there be a presence in the villages then? Because that's been, should I say, sorely lacking for quite a number of years. Normally we only see the police where they're on the way through the village at speed to some other locations. So.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Good question. Councillor, sorry, Willard.
I can talk loud anyway. Have stated, we have heard a lot about Wisbech today. This antisocial behaviour is prevalent in all of our towns. I know particularly, along with Councillor Hicks, in March, we've had a series of issues. I just wanted some assurance that the initiatives that are being introduced and have been introduced will, like Councillor Booth said, spread across the whole of Fenland rather than concentrating in Wisbech alone.
Yes, my apologies. That is not solely Wisbech. What I spoke about is being introduced and has been introduced across Fenland.
Thank you for that reassurance. Councillor Barber, would you like to come in now with your questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The 12th of March was a very good reaction from the police in Wisbech. My question was going to be, can there be a more visible presence of the police? And I think you said originally, just a little while ago, that there's going to be a more visible, and is it going to be a regular visible presence in the towns?
It is, yes. As I say, we've dedicated specific resources to that role. and that will primarily be the neighbourhood policing team, but we're also supported by other teams as well. We have specific funding that's enabled an uplift in officers in and around our town centres across the northern district of Cambridgeshire, so Peterborough included. So yes, and it's something that we are continuing to develop. We are receiving an uplift in staff, so there will be certainly around the shopping centre, around the horse fair, and those areas that are identified as having potential issues with antisocial behaviour, there will be an increase in visible policing.
Thank you. Councillor Barber, did you want to come back on that? No? Oh. Before I bring in Councillor Booth. Okay, Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thank you for your assurances. I mean, obviously the government's allocated more funding specifically for community fund policing, but how long is it going to take before we actually see officers in place? Because they don't just magic up overnight. You've got to train them, haven't you? And obviously do the recruitment and etc. So
my colleagues and I are interviewing 36 people this week, and they will be in post within 28 days. So we have a very busy week ahead of us.
But surely they've got to be trained up. It's only 28 days to train them up. That seems quite short, because isn't it quite a number of months to be trained up to be a police officer?
So we're taking existing officers from other departments, so they're already trained, and they will be coming into neighbourhood policing, and then their roles will be backfilled from new staff.
Thank you.
Councillor Hicks.
How many new officers are we going to get, please? I mean, you're interviewing all those people, but how many of those officers are actually going to be dedicated to that project?
So across Northern Division, which includes Peterborough, there will be 36 new officers. Currently, at the moment, unfortunately, we have a number of vacancies. I'm looking to fill those vacancies with a further 3 officers. So that will bring us up to, across the board, 17 neighbourhood police officers, not including myself, across Fenland.
Any further questions? If not, I'll come in with a question of my own. Councillor Barber.
Can I just ask about illegal parking? Not just in Wisbech, but I'm sure in all the towns. I've seen on some of your communications that you've said there were 2 or 3 parking tickets given. How about one day where there's 20 or 30? It won't be difficult to find them, and people are really getting angry about all the illegal parking that's happening.
Yes, we do that. We do give out more than 2 or 3 at a time. We have to prioritise our work, and yes, we could spend all day, every day, giving out parking tickets. It isn't an efficient use of police time, and I long for the day when civil parking enforcement is introduced into Fenland. I know that is some way off, but I think that the police response to parking, I don't feel that it's effective. It is not a deterrent. We simply cannot afford to give it the time. We do what we can when we can, but I think that it doesn't really deter people from illegal parking.
Councillor Barber, would you like to come back?
Yes, I understand that you have to prioritise things, but I disagree that it wouldn't be a deterrent if you actually did, maybe 2 or 3 hours of ticketing. I think that might be a deterrent.
We do that, and still people park. When I came into this role, I didn't really know Fenland particularly well, so I did some research on prior policing priorities and local concerns, and a Google search told me that over the last 20 years, parking has been a significant issue. And I've seen predecessors of mine saying parking is an issue, a priority for the police, for the local policing teams. I think 20 years is a good stab at trying to address an issue, and we're still talking about it now. So I don't think that it is particularly effective.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I mean, just, I guess, to support the inspector with this, we have issued parking outside some of the primary schools in the rural area, and I've been aware that officers have been attendant on a number of days. They've warned people not to illegally park. That people have carried on, they've then been given tickets, and then the following day they've then parked again in the same place, with the police then off giving them another ticket. So it isn't as effective as people think. Some people are just willing to pay the fine, you know, it's not an easy thing to overcome. However, I guess if we do have more police around and about, it might make people think twice about parking illegally. But some people are willing to take the fines.
Yeah, they are, yes, and we will target those higher risk areas, such as you say, outside primary schools. But you will get the same people taking that chance, unfortunately. It's just something that will not go away, unfortunately.
Any further questions? Okay, if not, I just have a question about, you mentioned earlier in your presentation about working with young offenders of ASB, not offenders, that's the wrong term, but the younger people that participate in ASB. How have you found working with schools? Is that effective in trying to prevent young people from participating in ASB, and after they have committed ASB, how effective is working with schools to ensure that perhaps it doesn't, to deter them in future?
We're in a fortunate position where we have a dedicated schools officer, a PC, and he works very closely with my team, and it's I find it a very good working relationship that we have, certainly in terms of information sharing with him within our organisation, but with the school as well, so that we can almost bring their behaviour and the consequences of their behaviour into every aspect of their life. So we will visit them at home. There will be consequences at school. They may or may not be in trouble with the police, for example. So that information sharing and working partnership that we have with the schools, I find, is very effective.
That's really reassuring, because often it's ASB as a reaction to something perhaps that's going on in their lives, and it's good to know that there are various people involved that can look after the situation and observe the situation. So thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Roy.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. You mentioned the YES scheme, the traffic light system, and I know it's quite early doors at the moment, but have you got any stats to back up how effective it's been at each level? Do the individuals that you deal with kind of drop out at yellow, or are they going on to red? If you can just clarify, thank you.
I don't have any statistics with me, but what I can say is that there are individuals that are very well known to police and other agencies in a number of the market towns, and what I can say is that their names are coming to our attention a lot less frequently, and they're coming to partners' attention a lot less frequently. As I say, I don't have any statistical data with me at the moment, and it is a fairly new incentive, but first impression is that it is having an impact.
Councillor Roy, did you want to come back? Or?
No, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Hicks.
Sorry, I've got to leave the room. I've got a little bit of an emergency going on. I'll pop back in a minute.
Well, there are no further questions, no further speakers on this agenda item, so I'd like to thank you very much for your time this morning, and the information that you've provided has been really helpful. So thank you. Okay, item 9 is an update on the Diagnostic Centre in Wisbech. Hello, thank you for joining us today. Please can I ask that you introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your role in relation to this matter, and then just please go straight ahead in providing your update. Thank you.
Offer there are ultrasound, lung function tests, a range of respiratory testing, fibroscan, echocardiogram, spirometry, and pulse oximetry. So those would have been within the plan that CUH submitted to NHS England in terms of the services that we plan to deliver from the site from 25-26. Across the wider North Cambs Hospital sites.
Sorry, could you just turn on your microphone? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, it's on now. Apologies. So, obviously, the CDC is part of the hospital, but across the wider North Cambs Hospital site, we also have X-ray, phlebotomy, endoscopy, and urinalysis also being delivered. So, diagnostic tests, but not within the CDC environment. So, what you can see on screen is our activity since we opened, and you can see quite clearly that it was CT and MRI, which were the two lead diagnostic modalities from the site from its opening. In Christmas 23, the mobile MRI moved down to Ely, and in March 24, the mobile CT scanner that we had on site was decommissioned by NHS England. I'd like to just direct you to activity around November and December 24. So we formulated I personally led a working group between CUH, Queen Elizabeth Hospital and North West Anglia Hospital to talk about how we maximise the capacity and use the site as to best effect to support the local community. So that's where you can see the spike in activity in terms of the modalities that are being delivered. In September 24, we started supporting QEH with their ultrasound backlogs, and in December 24, we opened up direct access to Wisbech GPs for spirometry. So effectively no referral required. That was a direct access from the GP straight into the hospital. So the graph is just kind of an overview of that activity, so you can see where the activity falls off when we lose CT and both CT and MRI at the site. And then the upward trajectory, you can see there represents the work that we've done since then, working with local providers to ensure that we are delivering with the capacity that we've got, what the local population need in terms of the diagnostic modalities that are currently live. So just on the final slide, so in terms of that working group established, what we want to achieve in terms of the CDC and the wider site development. So there's ongoing strategic discussions with QEH, with CUH, with NWAFT about what services we need to deliver from the site, how we best efficiently a group of providers, but also how do we bring more services online that better meet the local population need. And we're currently undertaking all of the deep demand and capacity modelling that needs to sit underneath that to ensure we are doing the right things at the right time in the right place. We want to open up direct access for all local GPs. That includes Cambridgeshire and Norfolk. So I've had quite a number of conversations with Norfolk and Waveney ICB colleagues with a particular focus on the West Place side of Norfolk. I think quite often if you try and tackle the use of North Cambs Hospital for a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough lens, you lose sight of actually what patients on the other side of the fence in terms of the Norfolk side, and what access we could be offering to those patients as well. And we also are looking at how we can, if we want to bring more services online, we are going to have to improve some of the estates that exist within the wider North Cambs Hospital site. There are quite a number of parts of that hospital site which are in need of generation and actually would offer us a good opportunity to start delivering more services and actually improve the overall patient and clinician experience of receiving treatment at that site. In terms of the wider Fenland district updates, so we're doing a lot of work, as in with the ICB, in terms of working with our place and integrated neighbourhood teams to deliver that new care model strategy. And obviously I'm sure you've seen a lot of the national direction around the movement and the left shift of activity from the acute out into the community, and how we need to strengthen our neighbourhood teams to be able to coordinate and deliver those services. I'd also like to direct you towards the work that is currently in train around what we're calling same-day urgent care. SDUC, we need a new name for that clearly, but same-day urgent care. And that's really to ensure that all patients across Fenland have good access to same-day urgent care services, again, that are being delivered in a coordinated way and best meet the needs of the local population. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you. So we have quite a few questions that came through in advance. So who would like to start? Councillor Foyce-Beard.
Hi, yeah, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I've got a few questions on the letter that FDC have received on the 16th of May. Are you familiar, that's not one of the questions, but are you familiar with the letter? Lovely jubbly. So with regards to, on paragraph 6, with regards to the soft intelligence, what data was collected and how, and could we have access to it as to better understand the conclusion in more detail, please?
Okay, so I have provided a response to that question, which includes the data. So the data itself, what we focused on was what what Wisbeach GPs, because that's the data we have access to, what non-hospital ordered referrals are coming through for patients that are registered to those practices. So that will give us the idea of what the current need and demand is for those services, and that's what's going to formulate these strategic discussions about delivery both now and further down the line. And I've shared that data.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Foyce-Beard, I know you have other questions and they're all really related, so would you like to continue through your questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So my next question, on paragraph 7, it mentions it's not technically possible to integrate. If not now, do they have a timescale of when they are working towards that?
So I'm afraid when it comes to the NHS app that is led nationally, we don't have any influence over that locally, sadly. We know it's one of the ambitions with the NHS app, but unfortunately we are not aware of any timelines around that development feature.
Okay, lovely. So, and again, with the expansion also with that, how do we know then, or how can you guarantee that this is going to be the forefront of the plans, and we will be getting regular updates of that?
Sorry, do you mean in terms of the NHS app? So I think when it comes to direct booking, I think we will look to go for local solutions if there isn't a national solution in place. Ideally, with obviously the integration with the NHS app is the ideal, because that's what nationally is obviously everyone's driving for. But if we haven't got the right functionality available in the timeframes that we need it, I think we would need to look at local solutions at that point. But we would keep you up to speed with that in terms of what our thinking is on that front.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, what efforts are being made to ensure that staff and patients are aware of the facilities at Wisbech? In a recent telephone discussion to discuss an appointment, there seemed to be a lack of awareness of its existence. The staff member in the department was very adamant that there wasn't a facility, and the facility which was referred to in the letter, she said it's wrong. What they mean is the one in Kings Lynn. She was pretty adamant that it didn't exist. So, yeah, what efforts are being made to ensure that staff and patients are aware of the facility in Wisbech, please?
So in terms of the ongoing discussions that we're having, and also historical discussions around current and future delivery, we are including all stakeholders within that. General practice is quite pivotal in terms of that voice, in terms of ensuring that our patients are kept aware and up to speed. We also do regular updates with Health Watch and patient participation groups. So we do as much as we can to try and make the public aware of the services that are available. The best way to do that for us is definitely through that GP practice, in terms of making sure that the practice not only are involved in the discussions but are aware of what we want to, of what our future ambitions are. I reference in the response, we do, when we've got a clear strategy of what exact services we will bring online and when, we will bring the patient voice into those conversations again, so patients are hearing what we have to say firsthand.
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit, if that's okay. Thank you for the response, but how are you communicating what it does to, is it through meetings, is it through emails, is it through regular updates? How are you communicating its existence?
So it's through conversations, but it's also through updates and bulletins in writing with our stakeholders. Our patient-facing groups are part of those circulation. That would include Health Watch, and that would by proxy include patient participation groups. But I take the point. I do think we need to look at our comm strategy with the wider public in terms of how we get out to perhaps those patients that we're not getting through those routes.
Thank you. And one more point, sorry. But also the actual internal department, they had no idea that it existed. So also the internal departments too.
So again, I think, we obviously rely on stakeholders to ensure that their staff are fully up to date with what they do and when, and that for me is a minimum expectation that you would expect that employees within a stakeholder would know what their organisation does and when. So again, we'll take that away, and thank you for raising it.
Thank you. Just before I bring in Councillor Hicks, who has a question next, on that point that you mentioned about relying on the stakeholders, could you actually follow up on that after, at some point after you've left this meeting? Because I think that's a very crucial point. And just for the benefit of the public who are watching, and a lot of the public, we don't fully understand the mechanisms and, workings of the NHS. Could you just give a brief description of who the stakeholders are? I mean, I've got an idea, but just for the benefit of the public watching, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of the ongoing strategic discussions around the CDC and wider North Cambs Hospital site, those stakeholders would include local GP practices, so that's Wisbech and Fenland, colleagues from Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and I also extend updates to colleagues from Norfolk and Waveney ICB, including their integrated neighbourhood West Place, North West Anglia Hospital Foundation Trust, Cambridge University Hospitals, and we also have Health Watch representation on those calls.
Thank you. And just one more point of clarification, because I think it's relevant before we move on to further questions. From discussions, you've mentioned sort of, a catchment area has been discussed. Can you just describe what the catchment area is? How far beyond Fenland as an administrative district does the catchment stretch, please?
So currently, the catchment area is very much focused on Wisbech, Fenland and West Norfolk. The ambition is that the catchment should actually be further than that. In the spirit of patient choice, patients that sit outside of Wisbech, Fenland and West Norfolk should be given the option to access services at North Cambs Hospital, the same as they should be given option to access at any other CDC or facility across that district. So at the moment, it is a focus on Wisbech and Fenland, and we obviously want to make sure that the facilities best meet the needs of the local population, and that includes Norfolk too. But from a patient choice perspective, we should open that option up to patients as far as we can.
Thank you. So I'll bring in you now, Councillor Hicks.
I'd like to rewind a little bit to the NHS app, booking the appointments and things. I sit on a board with GPs, and they said to me that around 70% of appointments for the GPs are the elderly, obviously, because you have more problems when you get older, and they're the part of the society who are least capable of using computers and stuff like that, at least booking. Can you give me an assurance that you're going to leave a decent level of an alternative after this rolls out, so you can get elderly patients still doing the same things, ringing in for appointments and things like that, and that doesn't get cut down to a degree so they can't book an appointment?
Yeah, absolutely. So as much as we need to keep up to speed with modern technology in terms of that ability to book appointments online, we do recognise that we would still need to effectively double run with other processes to make sure that appointments are bookable for all patients, and that includes patients whether they are online or not. To be honest, I think it's unrealistic to ever expect that patients would be unable to book an appointment through telephone in the practice, as we know that is still the most traditional route of practice access.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks, do you wish to come back? Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned one of the main areas being Wisbech, and we know Wisbech has its own clinical diagnostic centre. I can't get my head round why, having had a portable MRI scanner there, it was moved to East Cambs, which basically meant that people in Wisbech had to travel to either East Cambs or to Norfolk if they needed an MRI. We know that Wisbech is one of the most deprived areas for health outcomes in this area. So why was that facility decommissioned in the first place? And why was it moved in the first place? And why doesn't it warrant getting an MRI scanner back there?
So in terms of the scanner move, that was an operational decision led by NHS England. Obviously, the CDC programme is an NHS England-led programme. The mobile MRI scanner was moved from Wisbech down to Ely to enable the MRI functionality to open up at Ely before the static MRI was in situ. The activity levels that we were seeing at Wisbech, and again, you'll see from the data that I've shared in terms of the local demand, the demand as it stands does not make an MRI scanner at Wisbech financially viable, and that was what led NHS England to effectively not accept the fact that we wanted to still include it in our plans. We did push to still have the mobile MRI, and I will go as far to say as we also put a plan into NHS England that involved moving that mobile MRI across other parts of the county to again make it financially viable to meet that demand, but it didn't meet the rules within this, or the guidance within the NHS England CDC programme.
Councillor Hay, would you like to come back?
Thank you for that. It's another reason why NHS England probably needs to be reformed, shall we say, because I just find it, I can't understand it in an area which is well known for not having a fantastic public bus service. doesn't have a railway station. So it's difficult for people to get to Ely, to get to King's Lynn. That's what they're being asked to do. And I would ask, can you continue to push for a portable MRI scanner in the way that you said you were?
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my question's similar, but more regarding the CT scanner. So, in your letter, you say the guidance from NHS England was that it should no longer be used. What was that guidance? Was it that it was too old, that it didn't meet, new, I guess, modern standards? I mean, surely having at least a piece of equipment that has been working could still continue to be used. And why was there a decision not to just replace it with a newer piece of equipment? Now, I expect you're going to say it's something similar to the previous answer. Why was there no pushback to NHS England?
So you're right, the answer is along the same lines as the MRI, in the fact that the level of demand makes the mobile not financially viable. And NHS England wouldn't commission the mobile units. There was very much a national push to ensure that CDCs were becoming permanent facilities as opposed to having mobile units within them. Again, we lobbied to have the CT exactly in the same vein as we lobbied to keep the MRI. Sadly, to no avail with NHS England, but we will continue to push. And again, likewise, the plan I referenced around moving the MRI around the county, we also wanted to do the same thing with CT. These things do have to be financially viable. We can't move away from that, but there are ways and means to get the activity running through these machines. And again, we put plans forward in a way that would do that, but NHS England did not support that through the CDC programme.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
So, obviously, NHS England, as I understand, it's going to be abolished, which sounds like it's a good news because it seems to be over bureaucratic and not actually delivering for local needs, and that's the whole point, I think, of the NHS is to deliver services locally, and they seem to be getting in the way of that. So, have you got any idea about the replacement, how that's going to work? Is there going to be more decision making locally, and will that enable the facilities to be reinstated back at Wisbech?
So having more local flexibility certainly gives us more opportunity to be able to do some of the things that we wanted to do. Clearly, you do have to look at the financials of that and make sure that none of your stakeholders are running at a cost pressure to deliver that. I would say, referring back to the slides, I think that's very much the development work that we're doing with Place and Neighbourhood, I think will enable us to start looking at what would that, if we pick on the roving model, for example, what would that roving model look like? How could we make it work financially? I think we would, as a system, we would need some injection of funding from somewhere to be able to support the pump priming of that. But again, I think having that local flexibility, at least it gives us an opportunity to put plans on a page and I guess to, present to organisations like yourselves in terms of what other help we could get within the system to support us to do something like that.
Okay, Councillor Roy.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned keeping services local, and Wisbech is very well known for the phlebotomy services that they offer there. People know about it in the area. And you also touched upon moving some of the services because of demand. Now, most weeks, several residents will approach me that they've either been referred to King's Lynn or elsewhere because the services are not available at Wisbech CDC. The communication between yourselves and the stakeholders is probably very effective. But if those services are not being offered to residents, is it because A, they don't know about it? Is it B, because the GPs are not referring to Wisbech CDC and automatically offering King's Lynn as the first option? I think maybe there needs to be some kind of investigation as to why that communication isn't being offered to residents, to either give them the option to go to Wisbech, or maybe that information hasn't been disseminated to local people that they know that these facilities are there. Thank you, Chair.
So again, I guess just to give a bit of wider context, so obviously QEH have now opened their diagnostic assessment centre on the King's Lynn site. And obviously with the fact that they do provide some services currently at North Cambs Hospital, that is now causing a capacity pressure for them in terms of running across both sites. That's where the strategic discussions become really important, because we want to make sure that the services are still live at North Cambs Hospital. So we need to make sure that we're all in sync as a group of stakeholders in terms of what that strategic ambition is. So a patient should always, a patient local to Wisbech should always be offered that service at North Cambs Hospital if that service is available at North Cambs Hospital. I think it's fair to say that because the way that NHS England have led the CDC programme and have made it very provider focused, I think they've put providers in positions where they're trying to kind of they need to make sure they meet their activity thresholds, and that can have a knock-on effect on pathways. But obviously things like the X-ray referrals up to QE, we are addressing in terms of switching those referrals back locally to North Cambs Hospital. So I guess the wider context here is, particularly within the CDC programme, is that we need to accept that you are going to double run on some services. If you're going in the spirit of patient choice, you are going to need to double run on some services. That is going to put some providers under capacity pressure, but it's our duty as an ICB and as a stakeholder group to best mitigate that. And where we're picking up the examples of where services that were local to patients are now being directed otherwise, we're making moves to make sure that they are where they should be.
Councillor Roy, would you like to come back?
Yes, just to finish, Chair. The important point that Councillor Hay raised as well, that it is one of those deprived areas that lacks the transport infrastructure to get those people to King's Lynn, and that's what I hear, most weeks, that it's too far for me to travel. It's huge cost on already household income pressures. So I think it just needs to be addressed a little bit more, and a little bit more onus given to offering those services local. Even if we're actually giving them the information to say that these services are now available, because they're just not up on the radar for a lot of residents, certainly the ones that I talk to. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. And I think that actually links back to the earlier question around the catchment area for the site, because actually the wider we can make the catchment area, the more beneficial it is to the local patients, because the more financially viable the services you're delivering become. So our aim is to, bring North Cambs Hospital as a site more live into the wider CMP and Norfolk and Waveney strategy, because that then enhances the catchment area, which then increases your financial viability of running the services, and therefore means you can do more for local patients.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Hicks next.
How is the conclusion drawn to find that things viable or not viable? Is it like if it's costing so much per patient, or not enough people are making it? And is that also something which has got government guidelines to it? So say if it's costing more than £500, I don't know how this conclusion's made, so this is a supposition, but if it's costing more than £500 per patient, obviously it crosses that threshold and it becomes unavailable. Or is it done on the fact that so many patients per week have to be using it and it falls below that? Is that your decision, or is that a government guideline? That's another question, by the way. Sorry.
It is calculated in the way that you describe. Obviously, you would have your I'm not a finance person, so apologies for clumsy language now. But you'll effectively have your overhead, and you'll have your staffing costs, and you'll be able to offer out a certain amount of capacity. Depending on how the payment is made, so picking on the CDC programme, each patient treated comes with a tariff. So if you're not treating enough patients, you won't make enough tariff cost back to effectively cover your outlay. Now that obviously becomes a provider decision, because if you're not getting the activity, if you're not getting the income in based on your outlay, then you're running that at a cost pressure. So obviously providers have to make sure that they are running not at a loss as an organisation, because obviously if you run at a loss in one service, you then compromise the delivery of another. That's where in a commissioning is obviously quite a key part of that as well, in terms of particularly if it's an item of service fee, which is effectively per patient. So relating it back to the North Cambs Hospital, the more activity you can get in the site, the more money, the more income you generate from the provider, the more financially viable that service becomes.
Councillor Hicks, would you like to come back?
Just a quick question. How much below capacity was the particular machines we're talking about today? I know I'm putting you on the spot, just a ballpark figure. I don't expect you to say we've got so many things and we had to do this at X amount. I don't, unless you've got those stats at hand. Yeah.
Which I can't find very quickly, obviously, as you can see. From memory, we were at around 40% in terms of the capacity that would have been offered. So those machines would, a mobile MRI, for example, you would operate at 11 slots a day, and the anticipation from the programmers that you'd run 7 days a week. So out of 77 slots that you'd have in a week, the local demand, when I talked about the non-hospital ordered diagnostics for the local practices, come out between 30 and 40 a week. So effectively we would need to find the additional activity from wider areas to make that service viable at that site.
Before I bring in Councillor Booth, I do know you've been waiting patiently. I just wanted to say, I was going to say this at the end, but I'm going to make the point now that we will arrange, member services will arrange for the additional statistical data to be shared with panel members as an action following this meeting. Councillor Booth.
Well, my question is quite similar, but it's more, I suppose, on the CT. So looking at the numbers there, you've got about 400 a month. Yeah. If 5 days a week, which it sounds like actually you're operating 7 days a week, that was about 20 a day, roughly. So you're saying that it would probably need to be, what, about 60 a day, roughly?
If you operated those services within the CDC programme, which has the benefits because it's funded by NHS England, you then have to go with the guidance, which is 7 day working. So that means that's the capacity that you'd have to offer. If you went for a more locally commissioned agreement, then effectively you could run those services for the demands that existed locally, but you would have to amend how you delivered that service to make sure that it works out financially viable, and or make the local decision to run at a loss.
But again, what would be the number you'd need for the CT scanner to run? I mean, you're given the number for the MRI. What would it need to be for the CT scanner a day, roughly?
I'm really sorry, I don't have off the top of my head, I don't know how much it costs to run per day versus the amount of patients that you would have to see based on the commissioning, but I can get that information and supply it afterwards.
It just seems to me that obviously CT scanner, there was a lot more demand than, say, the MRI. So actually the argument to get that back is probably stronger, because actually, you're running about 400 roughly, appointments each month. So that can't be far off of where you'd need to be, because as I said, if it was 5 days, it'd be about 20 a day, which must be near capacity if it's one person every 15 minutes. Yeah, this is all off the top of my head, this maths. So yeah, I would have thought that actually for CT scanner, the argument's stronger to get that back in situ at Wisbech.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. And that's information that we will follow up with you on those numbers, on those figures, and that will be shared with the panel. Do I have any other questions? I know, Councillor Barber, you had a question. Would you like to present that now before I come in?
Thank you, Chair. Originally, it seems there were going to be 2 CDCs, one in Wisbech and one in Ely, both having an MRI facility. And the MRI facility was removed from Wisbech, so there's now only one in Ely. And I think you said that there wasn't enough usage of the one in Wisbech, but as Councillor Roy pointed out, I've also found that a lot of the GP surgeries didn't seem to know that that facility was here in Wisbech. And I think you would have had a lot more had the GP surgeries been referring to that one instead of going further afield. And, it was Ian Thomas, the CEO of North Cambs and Peterborough, said that we're proud to launch both of these CDCs that had all of this equipment. And it seems now we're losing out in the Wisbech one, which is better for the area of Fenland. Can you give any sort of update on that?
So look, as things stand, the unit in North Cambs Hospital is still a CDC. So it is a CDC and it will remain a CDC. And we run across what's called a hub and spoke model. So Ely is a hub and Wisbech is a spoke. That doesn't mean to say that the CDC at Wisbech should do less than what the population needs. Clearly, that's what it needs to represent. In terms of the MRI and the CT, again, I'm afraid it does come back to the local demand, because again, if you stretch the demand further out for Wisbech, you're then eating into the catchment area for Ely. So again, you have to make it financially viable, if you can, to run both services at both sites. Now, with the way the programme was set up and the way that NHS England commissioned it, that didn't make that possible for us to do. But as we've discussed, there are options available to us to make that financially viable, but that's going to have to be a more locally worked through solution than one through the CDC programme currently.
So I've got a few questions, and I appreciate that you're just here on your own and you're being bombarded with all these questions, but part of it is we don't understand how it all works, and so you're doing a really good job in telling us. Certainly I appreciate your really clear conveying of the, you know, the situation with the catchment areas and everything like that. So can I confirm then that Ely is not in our catchment area?
Geographically, no, because it's not in Fenland. But again, I think I would go back to the patient choice conversation. If you're a patient and you live in Ely, but you work in Wisbech, why shouldn't you have the option to go to North Cambs Hospital just as you would be given the option to go to Ely? So that's our ambition, is to give that patient choice across the board. But as things stand, obviously, if we're going to work on maximising North Cambs Hospital, we need to start with the local population and work their way out. So that's the long answer. The short answer is no, it doesn't fit within the catchment, but the long answer is if you're a patient in Fenland, you should have the option of both.
Thank you. Kind of leads into my next point, which is about Ely clearly being a more affluent area. I looked at the 2021 census for Wisbech, and I was very surprised to see that 26% of Wisbech residents, according to that census, do not have access to a car or vehicle. And as we all know, Ely is serviced by a railway station as well. But I'm sensing from you that rather than decisions being driven around these sort of facts, it's more driven by the stakeholders, the providers, and the financial aspect of it. Can you confirm that I'm right in my thinking there?
So yes, yes, but no. I can tell you, not one individual stakeholder wants to be driven by finances, but the finances are a reality. But that's the point of these strategic discussions, is to how can we deliver these services and not leave someone sitting with a financial cost as well. And I think that really is the conundrum that we as a group of stakeholders need to work together to solve. And actually that's why, for me, coming here and talking to yourselves about this is good, because I think it's people like yourselves that we would come to look to in terms of support if we could find a way through. But needed a bit of help. But yeah, finances do have to play a part, but they shouldn't play the only part. But as I've alluded to through this conversation, there are ways in which we can generate the income, for want of a better way of putting it, to make the finances viable, but we have to have the right pathways and strategy in place to make that possible.
In terms of the information gathered, particularly with the CT scanner that was decommissioned, how long was it actually, do you know how long it was active for before it was decommissioned? What the window of data was in terms of gathering information about patients that were accessing it?
So yes, we do. So the CT was there from opening till March 24, so it was there for the full year. With Addenbrooke's being the lead provider, a lot of patients were coming from the Addenbrooke's caseload because we didn't have the referral pathways in place for local patients. So that kind of muddies the waters in terms of where that demand was coming from. So yes, we've got that data. Yes, it was used as much as it could have been used. But actually, I think that the activity that was running through both the CT and the MRI would have been uplifted from patients that were willing to travel from South Cambridgeshire up to the facility at Wisbech. So it wasn't all made up of the local population.
Absolutely. Is there any scope for, as Councillor Booth alluded to, discussions around having another CT scanner? What shape would that take? What are the processes involved in trying to get that facility back to our catchment area?
So to give you the kind of full answer to that, your options would be that you either have machines, either mobile or a permanent static in situ, and you have the right pathways and access points in place that you can generate enough activity from across the county to make those modalities viable from within that site. Your other option is what Adam Brooks and the ICB explored, was having effectively what's called pads, which is the where you would actually park the mobile and plug it into the generator to make it operational. Is we have pads strategically placed at other parts in the county, and you effectively deliver those services on a rotational basis. So you wouldn't have MRI and CT at Wisbech Monday to Friday, but you may have it on a Wednesday because that's when we know we can generate most activity for that location. So I think those are the two options that make having that service at Wisbech viable.
Thank you. And how can we lobby to make sure that that can actually become a reality for the patients of Fenland?
So I think that comes from us within the ICB and the stakeholder group in terms of putting that plan on a page in terms of how we would make those, effectively what these different options would look like in practice and what we would need to make them work. And I think that's something we could share with yourselves and kind of get your view on how you could, what you would and wouldn't support within those plans and how we could work together to see actually if we could make this work.
Thank you. That's really reassuring, and we will, as we've mentioned previously, be in touch and have some dialogue after this meeting on the actions that we've all discussed. Does anybody else have any further questions? Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you got a bit of a grilling, but you rose to the challenge, so thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go back to agenda item 7 now, which is a presentation from Fenland Community Safety Partnership, including CCTV services. The report for this item can be found at pages 13 to 94 of the agenda pack. I would like to welcome and invite those attending for the presentation of this item to please join us. Thank you for joining us today. Please can I ask that you introduce yourselves and give a brief overview of your role in relation to this matter, and then please go ahead and commence with your presentation. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Councillor Susan Warwick. I am the chair of the CSP and I'll do when everyone else is finished there.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan Horn, Assistant Director here at Fenland District Council, and also look after the CSP along with colleagues here today.
Yeah, good morning, Alan Bowden, I'm the Community Safety and Partnership Officer. Good morning, my name is Aaron Locks and I have the pleasure of managing the CCTV service on behalf of both Fenland and Peterborough City Council.
Michael Basford, Neighbourhood Policing Team Inspector.
Thank you.
And I was just going to say, you've had the report, so we're happy to take questions as you see fit.
Is everyone happy with that? Just going straight into questions. This item's now open for discussion. Okay, Councillor Booth.
So thank you for the report. The bit I want to raise was about you said we did part of the report, specifically speeding on page 23 of the report pack. So the response you've given there seems to indicate that you're saying it's not really your responsibility speeding, therefore you'll help others, but it's down to other people to sort of try and tackle that issue. I must say I'm quite concerned with that response because speeding has been an issue that has been looked at in the past and was never quite a priority, but it was an area of focus or something like that, I think you gave to it. Now, my concern is that you're not actually delivering what the community wants. And the title of your organisation is Community Safety Partnership. So, if people say they've got concern on speeding, then why is it that it's not a priority? And I guess, part of that, you're supposed to be holding like community engagement events. I believe it's under the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act 2011. That is a responsibility that has to be done, and that's supposed to be shaping your priorities. So why is there this response there? Why is speeding not an issue that's being taken more seriously? I know, obviously, we do have the Speed Watch groups, and I should declare I'm a member of that. I think most members here have probably been engaged in some form or other with Speed Watch, but that's down to to volunteers in the community, and people can't be out today. But for example, I drove past one in Parson Grove this morning because we had a team out there. So yeah, I'd just like a response to that.
Thanks, Councillor Boone, for the question. So, in terms of road safety, there are many groups in many areas of community safety that have a county-wide group, and in this case, I think you referenced Vision Zero is a county-wide group that works on and coordinates the road safety work across the whole of Cambridgeshire. So, with all the county-wide groups, we defer to those groups and say, you come to us as a community safety partnership where you need help in some way, and then what we will do is try and look at the resources we've got as a community safety partnership and work out how we can help to the gap that you've identified. So I think in terms of road safety, that's how it works. So in terms of the relationship between the county-wide group and the local Fenland related community safety partnership. So what we did last year in response actually to overview and scrutiny referencing this, we asked for Vision Zero to actually come in and present to you as a community safety partnership. I can't remember when that happened, but I think that happened in the last year or so.
I don't think it's happened in the last year. I think it was around a year ago. It might have been just before you attended.
I haven't got the date to hand, but I might be able to find while we're tapping away in this meeting in terms of when exactly it was. So, and there was a presentation given that day, and you as a committee were able to question on that work at that time. So we're not. So I guess what we're saying is it's there. It's an offer. I guess what we could do. As a suggestion based on your feedback today is we could contact the Road Safety Partnership and ask them to come along and give an update to the Community Safety Partnership meetings. We have 4 a year as an agenda item, and ask them specifically, is there any, in terms of the work that's going on in Fenland, is there a gap, is there a problem where you feel us as a Community Safety Partnership could help with that? Because that's sort of how we operate as a group. We don't want to duplicate or do things where we know it's in hand elsewhere, but equally, we always say to all these county-wide groups, and I think there's around certainly 7 or 8 county-wide groups, there's an offer there to all of them in terms of coming to our partnership, and that has worked well in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make the point that speeding is probably one of the biggest issues that we get complaints about. And I know you hold some community engagement. I've said I think they need to be larger forums. They certainly used to be. But they seem to be sort of downsized, I guess, over the years. But I think if you speak to people, that's the biggest issue they'll talk to you about. We've got an issue here with like the number of fatalities from accidents across Fenland because of like the drains we have. It is, I think, a priority that does need to be addressed. And I guess with the inspector here, previously the police did come out probably year before last, and they were attending quite a number of sessions over the last year. That has dropped. Now, I know you're going to say, you've got to prioritise your resources and you can't be at every session, but it was actually having quite a marked impact because they would see the volunteers on the side of the road and the police officers. I mean, they might only be there for 10 minutes as they were passing through to do something else, but at least there was a presence. So, I think that needs to be reinstated to sort of press the message that, yes, it is being addressed. And I think just for information, I think we have actually started to get the police sort of cameras, the mobile camera ban, actually in Fenland for the first time in God knows how many years, following all the data that's being presented from the speedwatch groups. And we've had the county coordinator actually come up to Fenland because they didn't believe the data that was being given to them about the number of speeding vehicles, and they saw it for their own eyes, and they've then pressed for the camera van to be sort of stationed up here. So we've made progress in some areas, and then we've dropped back in others. I think it needs to have a concerted effort.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Dan, would you like to come back?
I have found when the Road Safety Partnership and Vision Zero came along, it was on the 9th of September 2024, so about 10 months ago. Should have remembered it was my anniversary.
Thank you. I remember the meeting. I just didn't recall how long ago it was. On your point about getting the Road Safety Partnership back in, we can discuss that under the Future Work Programme item. Does anyone have any more questions? Did you want to come back? Sorry.
I just wonder if Inspector Basford could just comment on my point about police attending some of the community speedwatch sessions. They were really active and really supporting it. I think it was a year before last, and over the last year it has dropped off, I think.
I think that is an excellent idea, so I will take that away. What I would ask though, if there is any opportunity to promote further speedwatch groups within Fenland, because we are lacking somewhat, then anything that can be done to increase those groups would be really appreciated.
I think that's probably an action that FDC can take away with its comms and that, to try and get more groups set up. And I know we've got a number of active groups, but again, it's all dependent on volunteers, and sometimes we just need to refresh the volunteers in some of our groups as well. So the more we can do with that, I think would be beneficial.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Councillor Hicks.
Just to clarify, who's actually responsible for setting up these groups? And is it like 50-50, the community, yourselves, or a mixture of the two? How does that work?
We have a speedwatch coordinator who will basically identify individuals that want to join the scheme, provide the equipment, provide the training. So it's something that we do in-house.
Councillor Booth.
And also I think parish and town councils can take a sort of lead in that as well, in trying to set the group up. So I know the one for Pastoral Road was St Mary, both parish councils supported it and coordinated it with the police. Basically, you've got to get your volunteers there trained up, and then the equipment's provided by the police, and it's off you go. I believe there was one in March Town, but I'm not sure if it's very active now. I haven't heard anything about it. So.
I suppose it's a bit like the chicken and the egg scenario, where you have to get the volunteers to do it, But can I just ask you that you sort of like make a push for the areas what are not covered in and around the area? Can you make that not a priority, but can you make that a concern for yourself to set up the extra groups for the places what are not covered in the Fenland area? For the coverage, to get more groups available.
Yes, absolutely, we do, and we are really asking for people to help with that and to join us. with Speedwatch, and as I say, anything that could be done here with yourselves to promote that and to enable us to get further volunteers would be really appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks, did you want to come back? Okay, Councillor Willard.
Yeah, thank you. Just to I just caught the edge of that to update on the March Town situation. We do have equipment at March Town Council. The equipment is not currently functioning, and rather than spend a fairly considerable amount of money on updating this equipment, the council are investigating other methods or more up-to-date methods of policing speeding around the town.
Thank you, Councillor Willard.
Just come back on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I believe the equipment that's actually provided by the constabulary. So I'm not sure it should be a cost to March Town. I know some parish councils have contributed, but not all of them. And the constabulary has provided the equipment to a number of groups free of charge.
That's possibly an action that we can follow up after this. We can find out that information. And while we're on the subject of Speedwatch, can I, for those, I don't know if this is your ward, but Tolamos Strove, they are desperate because that's used as a rat run.
Okay, so the issue we've got in Tolamos Strove is you can only operate Speedwatch in 40-mile-an-hour limits, and also you've got to have a risk assessment done to make sure that it's safe for the volunteers to work there. I believe we're trying to get volunteers in Wisbech St Mary, but again, it's back to this issue about getting people to come forward to undertake it. So, but yeah.
Thank you. So maybe the part of the hamlet that is 30 mile an hour could be done. Does anyone, Susan, did you want to come in?
Thank you. I was just going to sit and say, so the CSP will take that as an action to help market and spread the word about volunteers needed and set them up in the smaller parishes as well. Talking about your rat run, there's other things that you can do. So there's a rat run in Wisbech that we spoke to the speed coordinator, and then they put up cameras to monitor the speed. So they weren't capturing people per se, but they were capturing the speed. And obviously everything's evidence-based. So the perception of speed is a lot different to what the actual speed is. So there are other things that they can do. So if you don't have the information, we can send that afterwards so you can make contact and have a look at what other things can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That would be really helpful. Does anyone have any other questions for any members of the panel before I come in? In that case, I've got a question for Aaron. Now, I know, obviously we've had discussions before about the ram raid, but it is the case that there have been a couple of incidents since then where I'm getting feedback from residents that they don't feel that, to put it bluntly, that the CCTV is good value for money. Obviously, I represent Whittlesea, so I'm going to talk about specific Whittlesea events, but the oil spill, the breaches of the pedestrian causeway, people driving down the pedestrian causeway, high causeway, and then, of course, the ram raid incident still comes up. So, being mindful of the need to take care in discussing this information, could you talk about the attempts that are made to capture this information, and maybe some statistics just to put people's minds at rest that the CCTV is there for the benefit of the public and to make them feel a bit more secure?
So, yeah, certainly, obviously it's understandable when concerns are raised when CCTV appears to be absent when serious incidents occur, such as the ram raid that occurred last year and the oil spill last August. And obviously we're very aware of the ongoing vehicle breaches within the pedestrian zone within Whittlesea in High Causeway. I probably want to emphasise that CCTV is not a silver bullet, to solve all our sort of issues. It's not all seeing. We've always been very open about that. It's not designed to prevent every incident within our district, but it does contribute significantly to community safety. And although I can't guarantee that we will cover every event or incident, especially when these incidents occur out of view or unfold very quickly, like the ram raid. So to talk about the ram raid, the system was fully operational that particular night. However, the incident did unfold from start to finish within 2 minutes. I think we should be mindful of that. And that particular camera covers a very busy town centre marketplace, so we have a number of presets that we have to cover. And unfortunately, at the time of that event, the camera was looking towards the nighttime economy at a licensed premise. And like I said, it unfolded within 2 minutes. So even though it was very blunt in its sort of damage that occurred, it was very sophisticated in its planning. And unfortunately, these incidents happen up and down the country, and CCTV alone cannot prevent or interrupt such sort of type of criminal activity. In regard to the oil spill, again, CCTV didn't report at the time. However, I can give reassurance that the CCTV data has been provided to highways officers from county to support their retrospective investigations of that matter. So even though we weren't at the forefront at the time, retrospectively we did provide a lot of data to our highways officers for that. And then in relation to High Causeway, we are fully aware of the ongoing issues. It's something that Worsley Town Council talked to us a lot about. We can direct the cameras to capture that activity, but the power to enforce does rely on others, and we're very clear CCTV can provide the evidence, but we need others to enforce that. We did speak to Worsley Town Council about some of the other areas of business that we do provide for in relation to Peterborough, how we control or manage bollards, access control. So it's something we could particularly introduce within Whittlesea, but again, we would need to be obviously directed by the Town Council and others to support that. So there is a role for CCTV, you know, in relation to community safety and for traffic management, but again, we do need that support. I suppose just to add a bit more reassurance, as you've seen in your reports, we've been involved in over 1,100 incidents in the year alone, covering the whole of Fenland, and actually leading to over 200 arrests. That's one of our highest number of generating of arrests from CCTV in a year since we began. So just give you a bit of reassurance, even though those two particular incidents doesn't really show, sort of highlight or value the other 1,100 that we have been involved in. And it's not just crime that we get involved in, it's safeguarding, it's your missing persons. So hopefully that does give a bit of reassurance to the panel.
Thank you, Aaron. I can confirm that when I went into San Martin House, the CCTV is brilliant. I mean, you can zoom right in. I had absolutely no idea of its capability until I went in there. Literally every corner of that manor field, you can zoom in, and I know that you have caught some people on the manor participating in illegal activities, and that was resulting in arrests and such. So thank you for your reassurance. Does anybody else have any questions on the CCTV? Councillor Hicks.
Would I be right in assuming that on the more serious planned crimes that the CCT is less effective because obviously they knew that was pointing in that direction at that time, whereas the lower level criminals, say you go in and you're fighting in the street or you're going to pinch something out of the shop, are the CCT more effective in those scenarios?
Answer is yes and no. We get involved in some sophisticated crime and organised crime. Obviously I can't go into details, but CCTV is widely used by specialist teams to prevent and disrupt organised crime. It's just unfortunate that when times unfold very, very quickly, we're against the clock. And on that particular night, the time the call was made and that got through to us, the vehicle had already left. So when we're talking less than 2 minutes, we're against it. But we do get involved in, you know, all types, from the very low level to the really high sophisticated. I'd like to think we would deter most things because we don't get a lot of serious crime within our town centres, within our camera zones.
What the stats was, you know, in consideration to serious crime regarding, as opposed to low-level crime.
I don't know what the stats are entirely, but I would like to say that actually serious crime within Fenland is particularly low compared to what I see on the other side of the fence, shall we say, from the Peterborough side.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Booth.
I think in the past people were concerned with the move to like Peterborough because they were saying how many cameras you had to monitor with like the number of staff. But I'm just wondering, even though I'm a Luddite and don't necessarily approve of it, but people talk about using AI now to help with things such as CCTV. Has any consideration been given to that to try and improve your what you can cover?
Yeah, there has been trials up and down. Luckily not in Peterborough, Fenland as of yet. We're still a long way from using AI to support what is currently being dealt with by operators. Our team do have a particular good sense of knowing when to look and where to look. I don't think AI is there. The problem we have as well is around the cameras, where they move. If you're dealing like with facial recognition, it needs a fixed point, a fixed focal point. If you look at the public space cameras, the way they work, where you've got a lot of movement at different angles, we're just not there yet. I'm not saying never, but I don't think we're not there at the moment.
Wait and see what happens elsewhere before.
Definitely. Let's let them do the trials. Let's get them get the headaches, and then hopefully we can take any learning from that and put it into our own control. But we are constantly horizon scanning, and if there is opportunities to improve what we already do and enhance our service to the community, then we implement that.
Thank you. Any other question? Councillor Roy, did you have a question? Did you want to?
Sorry. Probably Inspector Bass would probably be able to answer this one better. CCTV is something that we need these days to tackle crime. Is there any evidence to suggest that maybe some of that low-level crime that used to take place in areas where there is CCTV is now moving outwards to the peripheries and into the rural areas where there is no CCTV, or it's not covered as much by CCTV? Have you been aware of that, or are you?
I don't think that's the case. There will always be those individuals that will run the risk of being captured on CCTV in the town centres and wider areas, and there will always be those individuals that prefer to commit offences in our more rural areas. CCTV is invaluable for us. It is worth its weight in gold. And just picking up on the AI issue or point, we use facial recognition quite a lot, and it is quite successful for us. And if it wasn't for the presence of the cameras and the really good quality images that it provides us with, it wouldn't be as successful.
Thank you for your response. Councillor Roy, did you want to come back before?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll bring in Councillor Booth then.
I think that it was the last meeting we raised about the issue of bike riders around Leverington, and the fact that we needed more mobile units, because previously when we'd asked the question, we were told it cost like £100,000 to put one camera in a location, or something ridiculous like that. So do we yet have the ability to place a mobile CCTV camera, particularly if we're having an issue in a location? Have we advanced with that, and have we actually used it?
I can confirm, as part of the Safer Streets programme, we do have 5 mobile redeployable cameras within Fenland. They're currently in locations specific to Safer Streets Directive, so it's not a case of we can choose other locations to deploy that to, but they work on 4G and 5G mobile SIM technology. So as long as there is a power supply and a suitable structure to put the camera on, we could deploy anywhere where there is that mobile signal within Fenland. So the answer is yes, we can move forward with that.
But we haven't yet.
No, and there's always a cost to relocate cameras. So, again, as long as the budget exists and we are able to, in the future, relocate those cameras, then it is possible. We do have the technology to do that.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other questions for this group of people? Okay, I see no hands up. Oh, Councillor Booth.
Yeah, it was more an observation about the report. So obviously we've got quite a long list of actions, but what we don't have is like a set of KPIs so that we can measure how effective the CSP is, and is it actually, are your actions actually driving improvements in the areas that you call focuses. So I think we need to have some KPIs developed so that we can actually monitor it, because at the moment all it is have you delivered a particular action? If you have, you put a RAG status against it, but actually surely we should be looking at what is the outcomes. Is it driving down lower criminal behaviour in those priority areas that you've set? So I think that needs to be developed and reported back.
Susan, would you like to come back on that?
Well, yes, please. And I think probably me and Dan will do this together. So yeah, we love KPIs. We all have a smart outcome. We all love to measure them. But our priorities are set by police data for a start, and they change quite often. So it's very hard to then measure them in long-term measurements. We can look at certain things, but the crime strategy, the crime outcomes affect our strategy. So it makes it very difficult, but it's not saying that we can't do something, but I think maybe short-term strategies might be the best way to go about that, and measure them short-term rather than long-term.
Yeah, just building on what Councillor Walworth just said, how we operate as a partnership is, so we have a strategic assessment once a year, so we commission research on all the statistics, so all the data from the police and other sources, the secondary data sources, that come then to the partnership, and it's a comprehensive report that we've just received it in April at the last meeting, and from that we discussed what the report sort of suggested, some priorities. We had a debate around that as part of our community safety partnership and approved what we thought our priorities are for the year. And then from that, we look at what we can do as a partnership within the resources available to help have a positive impact on the priorities that we set for the year. So that's how it works on a year by year, which is incredibly led by data. And then we try and show the impact of what we've done in the detailed action plan with the progress to date, and that's how we sort of operate as a partnership. We get support from the Police Crime Commissioner on that, and we have received very positive feedback from officers from the Police Crime Commissioner on how we operate as a partnership in this regard.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, some of these priorities have been on there for years. So, I think domestic abuse has been an ongoing, constant issue. Surely there must be some metrics in place that you can use to show if the actions you're delivering are actually improving the situation or not. Because unfortunately, it just seems to be that it's just based on have you delivered an action, and we don't know if that action has been effective.
Yeah, so taking that point, I think the problem is the human element means that crime will continue, and domestic violence just continues. There's not much, we can't stop people from doing it. What we can do is educate people, give people an out, and obviously sentence them if need be. But we can't, people will just do what they want to do. I'm afraid it's the human part of the world. Oh, Dan's going to have a more professional answer. Rather than mine of, what can you do?
No, I was just going to add, again, that's another example of where we're driven as a county-wide group that looks at domestic abuse, but that's one area where the county-wide group does ask and come back to our partnership, say, how can you help in these areas? And we're often driven by what that county-wide partnership asks us to do. And a lot of what we do on domestic abuse is around tackling domestic abuse is around that workforce development, which again, I have to say, has received very favourable feedback from the county-wide group on the workforce development we do from frontline practitioners. So that's around, your professional curiosity when you're out and about, those frontline officers, about signs and then what to do in relation to that in a way that isn't going to perhaps put that individual that may be being a victim of domestic abuse in a difficult situation. So it's all the work around that. So, yeah, I mean, sadly, domestic abuse continues to be a priority of this partnership as it has done for a year, and that's because the evidence says it needs to be. It doesn't mean that the work of the partnership hasn't been effective, it's just that it continues with the evidence that we need to keep a focus on it, and we can do an impact on it locally.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, but surely over a long period of time, you would hope to see a downward trend in that area. that would be a measure to show that you're effectively tackling the issue. Now, I understand what Councillor Ward was saying, that some people are will continue to do it, but hopefully with what you're doing with, for example, the example you've given, you can identify the issues and then sort of take action. But there must be stats around like the crime figures, for example, that can show that hopefully it's a downward trend.
I think sometimes the evidence needs to come from how many people are coming forward as well. So we can't stop people from committing horrible crimes against people, especially women. What sometimes we can measure that against is how many women are coming forward. So you might not see the behind the scenes work. If you go in our bathrooms, you'll see it constantly on every poster, on every back of the door, of how to access support, how to do that, how to help your fellow woman. That's the sort of thing that we see, and that's spreading along. Though I appreciate it's not necessarily something that everybody sees in the community. The ones that need it do see it. But yeah, that's probably where the uptrend is going, the uptrend of education and support networks, and unfortunately the other side is not following suit. But
then you could have a stat there around, are you getting improved referrals, or improved number of referrals, to show that that's been effective. Because I did study sociology years ago, and one of the big issues with crime is it's reported crime versus unreported crime, and you don't know what the total figure is. So there will always be that sort of unknown. But surely, if you know that you're improving the referral rates because of the actions you're taking with developing workforce, that's a metric that you can show as being effective.
Just to explain, domestic abuse, like with road safety, there is a county-wide partnership. So there's the Domestic Abuse Sexual Violence Partnership, and they lead on the county's response to domestic abuse. That ties in very closely with the police, who pick up the crime side of that. So, like Sue has mentioned, there is actually some stats available within the police world which allows them to look at the number of domestic incidents they get, then against the number of those incidents that have been translated into, say, a crime investigation. So we as a partnership, we support the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Partnership in the delivery of their work, and we focus mainly on how we can help get those messages across to the community. So there may be some data that we can get from the DASV that could show number of referrals into certain things, but a lot of our work can't be sort of measured purely by statistics. As Sue said, it's around getting that message out and trying, and actually there are those messages on men's toilet doors. We've got them here at Fenland District Council on the inside of the cubicle doors. So yeah, again, we support other mechanisms across the county in these areas.
Dan, is yours a response to Councillor Blue?
It was just to build another point of what the Community Safety Partnership does, and it's another really important element, because we as a Community Safety Partnership, if there's a domestic homicide review needed, so there's been a death through some form of domestic abuse from some family member, etc., there's a statutory requirement to do a domestic homicide review. That's dealt with, driven by a county-wide process, but we're the CSP that has responsibility for looking at that, and in terms of the submission that's made to the Home Office in relation to that, which is then verified and eventually published with an action plan. Another key thing that the Community Safety Partnership at Fenland does is that we put all those actions into our monitoring of the Community Safety Plan action plan, because we're determined to ensure that any action that comes out of there is monitored for updates to make sure everything is ticked off and done, from any learning about that in terms of the engagement that took place from all the different partners who have some contact with the victim. So that's another key element of the work we do as a partnership.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Booth, have you got any further points on?
No, I mean, I think I've made the point. I think there needs to be more metrics in place so we can show that the work that's being done by the CSP is actually delivering positive outcomes. That's the point I want to.
Okay, I'd like to bring in Councillor Foy-Spear then, who has a question.
Thank you. It's just a point really. On the topic of raising awareness, I have to say the community engagement events that take place across Fenland are absolutely amazing. I've had no end of residents benefit from Stop Loan Sharks, cyber, fraud awareness. The fact that there are people there in person to have conversations, to myth bust and to just raise awareness of the different topics that are out there that can be actually quite traumatizing really and overwhelming. So the community engagements events are brilliant. If we can have more, sorry, the residents will benefit from them. They really are worth their weight in gold. So thank you for the community engagements events. If we can have more, thank you.
Victims of your own success there.
I was just going to say that's obviously Alan, Rosie, and it was Russ, but Russ just left. We're very, very lucky that they are front-facing, amazingly engaging members of the team, and they hold all that success and they deserve all that praise. So thank you ever so much. And of course, we would love to do more. And I know Councillor Booth is probably going to come up with parish council, and he knows that we try. So please don't. I've headed you off at the pass. But yes, thank you very much, and we'll feed that back to the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Booth, do you want to respond to that?
I've been told to.
Okay, then let's return to the substantive item. Do we have any more questions for this particular panel? Okay, so if there are no further speakers, I'd like to thank you all for your time and your attendance and all the information that you've provided. It's been really helpful. Thank you. In view of the withdrawal of item 10 of the agenda, we'll now move straight to item 11. The report can be found at pages 95 to 98 of the agenda and confirms the occasion since the last meeting when the chairperson has been asked to exercise her authority to waive the ordinary requirements in relation to the forward plan. Are there any questions on this, please? Okay, if there are no questions, we'll move on to agenda item 12.
Sorry, Chair, just on that, I suppose, just the point about getting Vision Zero back, isn't there? Which obviously we discussed in the previous item. So, yeah.
That's noted. Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 12 is the update on previous actions. You'll find this information on pages 99 to 100 of the pack. The response from Anglian Water is noted. Are there any additional questions, points or items to add in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Booth.
I mean, we've obviously got the response from Anglian Water, but it's not really anything definite. It's like, you know, it could happen in the future. So I think we need to keep it sort of active and ask them to give us an update for when they know their plans are confirmed. I can't remember when they said it was going to be in the next few months, wasn't it? I think. So I think we just need to keep it, between 6 and 9 months of knowing. That was February, so that'll be August, November time, won't it? So I think we need to keep it on there to ask for an update at that time, so that we can get an actual proper response. Because at the moment they're just sort of saying we're working on our plans. Once the plans are ready.
Yeah. Would you like to come in?
Thank you. Just to say, they are coming to see us in December.
Okay.
So what we could also do is ask them to specifically update us on that as part of that as well.
Yeah.
So we can keep it on as a watching brief,
Yeah.
and then we will ask them to actually provide us then, because it fits the time frame, doesn't it? Yeah, thanks.
In relation to Councillor Booth's point about the sort of 6 month or so updates, which we think might be the August time frame, would it be possible to get an update from them so that when they do come in December, then we've got the most up-to-date information? What do people think about that?
I mean, is it worth, maybe it might be too large a document, but they're obviously putting a lot down to this business plan they're developing, but getting the highlights of the business plan that are relevant to Fenland, so that we get an understanding of what they're going to be doing in our area.
I think that would be really helpful if we have that information ready for the December meeting, Amy.
Sure.
Okay, so this leads nicely into agenda item 13, which is the Future Work Programme, which is on pages 101 to 110 of the pack. So the Future Work Programme sets out the planned business for the panel for the forthcoming municipal year. Are there any questions or further suggestions in relation to the Future Work Programme? At this point, it might be helpful, Amy, if it's possible for you to give us a brief on who's coming and when.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to follow this through, on the 14th of July, which is the next meeting, we've got Freedom Leisure, and then we've got updates from the environment team and from our transformation and communications portfolio holder. I think it's probably worth sort of pausing there to say that what we try to do is organise the meeting so that we limit the number of external speakers that attend on each occasion, so that we're not keeping, often sort of like as today, police colleagues waiting for the whole morning. So we tend to have one external speaker who comes and presents first, and then we have our internal speakers, because we can communicate with them via email or phone to say, right, you can come down now, and they can keep working. So as a general rule, that's what we try to do, and then we try to have about 3 items per meeting. But there is always scope to sort of put something else in if we need to. So then September, we've got updates on delivering the economy and corporate objectives in relation to planning. Then we've got update on the CPCA growth service and economic development and the commercial investment strategy and investment board. And because these are all sort of largely internal, we've also got LGO and 3Cs then. October is Clarion, and then you've got your annual meeting with the leader and chief exec. And then December, as we discussed, is when we've got Anglian Water coming, the Arts Council, and an update on communities. January is always our big budget meeting for ONS, so we'll be talking about the budget, the draft business plan, fees and charges, and that has to take place then so that it can inform, obviously, the budget meeting in February. And then that sort of takes us almost through the current municipal year. There's a final meeting in March, which is Anglia Revenues Partnership, Public Health and Education. And we always have a meeting penciled in for April, but sometimes it's not possible for us to discuss substantive business items if we're subject to the sensitive period for political reporting. So we just have to play that by ear in terms of what we need to discuss, but that also gives us some scope for adding additional things in. So obviously today we've talked about some additional items which we'll look to accommodate. It's that road safety partnership. So really, yes, it's just a matter of keeping us updated if you want to add anything, so that we can do a bit of moving things about if we need to. But we've come up with a schedule which lists all of our regular items and whether we have them annually or biannually. And by and large, we then just try to stick to that each year so that you know what to expect when. But again, we are happy to make changes or make additions if they're needed.
Thank you, Amy. Councillor Booth?
Yeah, just on the 19th of January, can we just make sure fees and charges is before draft budget? For reasons I've stated in the past. And the April meeting, we haven't got any elections scheduled next year, have we? So, as far as I'm aware, so I think we should just start. We have?
No, I was just nodding in agreement
Oh, yeah,
with you.
right.
At the moment, at this point in time,
Yeah.
although, you know, several months can be, you know, it's a long time.
Yeah, but maybe we should start to add in extra items because I think, yeah, normal course of things, we should be able to have a normal meeting, shouldn't we? So.
I have put forward a request to Amy for Greater Anglia because I think, based on the fact that we have got 3 railway stations, there are, you know, it's going back to nationalisation. We've got the issue with the Ely North Junction. It's, you know, sort of 20 years on with that. So there are a number of questions that I feel should be asked. But if anybody has any other ideas to put forward to Amy either now or at a later stage. Councillor Booth?
I mean, should it not be National Rail? Because Greater Anglia are only the franchisee, aren't they? And they can't answer the questions really about the infrastructure, which that is National Rail, which is the stumbling block for everything we need for our local area.
Absolutely. With it moving towards nationalisation, I mean, I think it may be a meeting that we get the rail partners in because, I mean, there are several companies that stop at our stations, and I think it's part of the integrated whole. We need to talk to, so if possible, maybe get a meeting with the rail partners. It might be more beneficial because it's the parts of a complicated whole, aren't they?
The only issue we will have is we don't have an automatic right to call them before us, do we, Amy? Because it's not really within our statutory remit, is it, as I understand it?
Yeah, we can invite people, and by and large, people are happy to attend. So we just then have to be careful about how we frame our questions so that we can get the most out of that. So we'll try, yeah.
Don't forget Maney Station. That gives us 3.
I did say 3.
Oh, did my apologies.
Yes, yeah. No, I haven't forgotten.
I thought it said 2.
With its glorious car park. Any other questions on this item? Okay, so agenda item 14 are items which the chairman deems urgent, and I can confirm that there are none. So this marks the end of the meeting, and I declare the meeting closed. The next meeting of ONS is scheduled to take place on the 14th of July at 10 a.m.